The Ys series has some of my favorite bosses in gaming, and Ys 8 is no exception. Bosses will be ranked based on 4 criteria: the boss's design, the battle's aesthetic, its memorability, and its fun factor. We have a lot of bosses to burn through, so let's get started. Also, major spoilers. Duh. I think it speaks volumes that the least interesting boss is the tutorial fight. It serves its purpose, it teaches you the basics, and it's your first battle in the game to boot. Every boss after this one expands upon the basics. Not only that, but this is just an appetizer of a battle much later in both the game and the ranking.
Well, that's not bad.
The towering coral forest is a fantastic area to experience. An elevated seafloor filled with numerous flora and fauna makes for quite the set piece. This area has some of the best music in the game, and comes with 2 bosses. One of them is really good, and the other is Serpentis. This large turtle is the first boss of the Coral Forest, and he has 2 targets, its head and its tail. Both of these can be tricky to pinpoint, since they like to move around a lot. It can poison you with toxic breath, which spices up the fight a little bit. Plus, its shell is more than just visually interesting, it releases deadly bubbles. Other than that, the only other memorable thing about this beastie is its arena, which makes for a nice fishing spot after the battle. Oh well.
What is this?
With a list of close to 40 bosses, I was surprised I only forgot about a handful of them when putting the list together. For Colacantos, apologies if I butchered the pronunciation for these critters by the way, it had the disadvantage of being far into the game, so it easily got overshadowed by bosses that came before and after it. I like that the boss can electrify the water, but its health is so pitifully low it's barely going to make an impression. I felt a lot more could have been done with an electric boss.
Where am I supposed to go?
Now on paper, I like the idea of this boss a lot. A nest of worms that hides an even larger worm once you burn away half of its health. For some reason, the execution just left me wanting more. I liked how hectic the battle got with more and more worms popping out, but once the big one shows up, it's just a typical giant monster battle. Call me crazy, but I might have found the battle more memorable if the giant worm could still command the mini worms to aid it during the fight.
This beast!
Aside from the tutorial boss, Behemoths is the first boss in the game, and it does its job well. This chonky bat may move slowly, but it can pack quite a punch if you're having trouble with the flash guard and flash move techniques. Unfortunately, this is the fight that teaches you about extra skills, so most of its HP is going to deplete after you use it, ending the fight quite quickly. Not a bad boss by any means, but this game has so much more to offer going forward.
This is the fruit of our labor.
The Kirby series has taught me that giant trees can make for a formidable foe. Magamandra is the demon tree that does just that. The boss may be stationary, but it can pack quite the wallop if you're ill-prepared. There can be a lot going on as you start taking down its cocoons. From whip-like branches to lethal roots, Magamandra can easily overwhelm the weary adventurer. The Sanctuary Crypt is an ongoing dungeon that takes place in Donna's era. At the end of each floor is a variant of these Sanctuary Guardians. They are a little samey, but overall I feel they are Blight Ganons done right. The least interesting of them all is Nabrisha, the daring Jade Hammer. Slow but powerful, Nabrisha is the boss that tests your usage of Donna's Gratica form. I'm personally not a fan of slow-moving yet powerful movesets, and this boss does little to change my opinion of them.
This should do.
Gracios is another one of those Sanctuary Crypt bosses, but it's a spot above Nabrisha for lack of Gratica usage. This is technically the first Sanctuary boss, so Gracios is nothing special compared to later versions. Later versions of this boss type are much more unique in comparison.
Ah!
Lacrimosa of Donna has a lot of impressionable foes, but there is one who leaves its mark early on. Avaladragil is the vicious primordial beast who stalks Adol and company throughout the first chunk of the game, and this wicked dinosaur must have taken stalker lessons from Metroid's Ridley. Granted, its vicious behavior is warranted. I mean, Sahad did pop the poor sucker in the mouth after all. It was at this point that I knew these boss battles would be glorious. You may have a full party of 3, but Avaladragil is quick and lethal, a true test to grasping the combat system. Plus, Deadly Temptation is this dino's theme song, and it fits so well. Not long after recruiting Rakota do you come across this enormous gorilla who, as it turns out, is Rakota's master. That's right, Master Kong will challenge each party member individually in a brutal brawl, especially if you're not too familiar with that character. Each fight isn't vastly different, so I decided to put them all in this spot. If you want to see a quick mini ranking of the brawl, here you go. It feels super satisfying to whoop this monkey's butt with a character you are good with though. All you need to get in on the action is one ripe mango.
All right, let's do this!
Halfway up the Baja Tower, our party encounters an enormous suit of armor called X-Metal. Just look at the size of its club. Okay, you've seen these kind of bosses 100 times before. They move slow but hit hard up close. You just gotta keep your distance and oh, it fires homing shots. This boss fight can be pretty intense and I love it. It's like a Souls boss on ecstasy.
I was frozen today!
Well, of course this boss is a giant spider. I mean, this is an RPG, isn't it? Gargantula can poison and paralyze you and is incredibly fast. Unlike the worm boss, Gargantula also releases smaller spiders to keep you at bay. I really like the variety of movesets this arachno bastard pulls off. Gargantula constantly keeps you on your toes, and even has a death ray that can one-shot you if your dodges are poorly timed.
Do me a solid, dead guys, and please rest in peace.
Now this dude has a sick design, a giant undead lizard man. Doxagriel is the first undead enemy you can take out, and by the gods does it feel satisfying to do so. But Doxagriel won't go down easily. This demon has a huge sword and fiery projectiles, so watch out. Its most devastating move is when it thrusts its blade into the ground and lets loose a huge dome of fire. Luckily, with a well-timed flash guard, you can survive the onslaught of flames. In the final dungeon, the Octus Overlook, the party must travel across 4 separate eras. At the end of each era is a boss based off the corresponding Warden's psyche. They range from kinda decent to pretty unique, and unlike Master Kong, the fights are really diverse, so we'll be ranking them separately. The least interesting of the 4 is Minos. Look, Minos is just a big dude who kinda blends in with the other bosses that are just a big dude. He hits like a truck and can take quite a bit of a beating, but aside from that, he does little to stand out from the rest. Sorry, big guy.
It's been a long time, Donna Eclusia.
The Warden with the most backstory and character has a battle that is okay. The design is unique, but Psyche Aura does little to tower over other Psyche battles. She fires a lot of projectiles, sure, but if you get up close and personal, you could deal a majority of the fight's damage before she can get away. Also, she's so tall that a couple of her attacks just fly right over you if you're close.
You have shown remarkable fortitude in the face of this adversity.
The first Psyche you face is Psyche Hydra, and you'll want to be careful when fighting this guy. The battle arena takes place on a ring floating above the abyss, and falling off is definitely a possibility. Hydra will summon legions of sharks that will try to knock you off, so keep that flash move handy. Hydra also tends to slither across the battle arena. It was an enjoyable fight overall, but I found one Psyche battle to be just a tad bit better.
My name is Nestor.
Yup, my favorite Psyche battle was with Nestor. This swarmy witch had the pros of the other 3 Psyches without the cons. She's quick, powerful, deadly, and if you take too long, the battle will get trickier. You see, the battle arena has these honeycomb shapes that Nestor will periodically eliminate, so you must be quick. Unfortunately, Nestor will make sure this won't be an easy task.
Suppose it be time now.
As much as I really liked this boss's design, I just couldn't put him up higher due to how little variety his attacks have. The Pirate Revenant is not fast at all, and you can just chop away at his health by flash guarding his surprisingly predictable attack patterns and getting behind him most of the time. Missed opportunity for not utilizing his wings at all. Argura starts as your typical Sanctuary boss just with a giant sword, but shortly into the fight he sports a giant shield and the battle tactic gets much more interesting. Now you must switch between Donna's regular and Gratica form to emerge victorious. Flash guarding his shield at the right time is ever so satisfying, and his swordplay gets much more aggressive as the battle goes on. Definitely a step up from the others.
You guys are real marks.
Now here's an undead boss that has a little more going on with his battle. Basilius is a prehistoric necromancer with two phases. In his first phase, he's out of reach and protected by a magical barrier. He will summon legions of skulls to attack you while occasionally pelting you with magical spells. Each time you destroy a skull, a lantern is lit. Once all the lanterns have been lit, the pass will open up to get close to the now vulnerable necromancer. Basilius is just as lethal up close though, so watch out. He may be a big target, but he can pack quite the wallop. Also, was anyone else reminded of Garland from Oath and Felghana? Hey, it's time to talk about the other boss from the Coral Forest. Yep, it's all the way up here. Clarion is the chameleon boss who is quite memorable, especially for being so early in the game. You fight Clarion on a log, so your perspective is rather fixed and less free-roaming compared to the other encounters. Clarion has both close contact and ranged attacks to keep you on your toes, plus a quick tongue that can poison you if you aren't careful. With 1 meter down, Clarion changes color and knocks you off the log and into the arena down below. Now, Clarion is above you with a legion of lizards to keep you occupied. This is such a dynamic boss fight for this early in the game. I love it.
Wide open!
Looks like the Sanctuary boss has ditched the sword and shield for some Wolverine claws. Hell yeah! This is the Guardian that tests your skills with a Lumina form, and it's all about speed and precision. There's also a bit of bullet hell going on, which is a nice callback to classic Ys. Considering Donna controls so fluidly, this fight is a real spectacle.
We're not alone. The swamp.
It's not every day that you take on an enormous hippopotamus in a video game, but Laspasis is pretty unique. What's nice is while the beast swims around, you don't have to wait for it to come close. You can take the fight to him by equipping those floating shoes. Laspasis will splash around, but when it hops onto land, things get very interesting. This guy is huge. If you can stay behind him, you can avoid his nasty chomping attack. Later in the fight, he'll charge around the arena firing electric shocks. Overall, an enjoyable fight with an exquisite design.
Are those Saurian footsteps?
As you near the last part of the game, you are faced with two gargantuan behemoths, Erithros and Lycianos. They are elemental based and solo boss battles to boot, so it's time to hone in your skills. Lycianos is the ice behemoth that you solo as Donna. There's a lot more going on with this fight, seeing as how you should implement all three of Donna's forms to get the best out of the combat. Lycianos has large shackles which protect the boss, so you must eliminate them first with Gratica. Lycianos will also freeze you, so use Lumina to break free. These gimmicks actually are what makes this fight the lesser of the two. All three forms are not used in an interesting balance, you just gotta switch between them when the situation calls for it. It's a puzzle boss, and although I don't dislike those, that's not where Ys bosses shine the most.
Your turn, Mr. Kristen.
Erithros is the fire behemoth that you solo as Adol. The heat is on because these attacks pack a wallop. Unlike Donna's behemoth, this fight doesn't force you to rely on switching forms. Because of this, it's just pure combat skills against a powerful foe. Whether you face this boss up close and personal, or you wish to stick and stay at a distance, this is an intense battle that highlights the glory of Adol the Red.
I can't believe you actually used a sacred prayer tree in this manner.
At first glance, this just seems like a retread of Argura with the sword and the shield. We did this already, bottom 5. But wait! Once the battle kicks off, it's a much different battle than what you might be anticipating. In fact, if you just fight him like Argura, you're gonna get your teeth kicked in. Argura was much more defensive, whereas Blasphema has no problem switching between its offenses and defenses when the situation calls for it. And when you finally shatter that shield, the fight ramps up with a flaming sword and burning floor tiles. Think you can take the heat?
Check out this weird-looking statue.
Eternia has a plethora of visually interesting structures, some of which look almost lifelike. Oh, well, of course. Brachion is the boss guardian at the end of the Temple of Eternia. This reptilian Shiva towers over the characters with enormous weapons that can crush you like an ant. It's not too tough because his telegraphs are relatively slow, so its attacks are easy to read. Still, a cool design and a fun fight. Even if this boss wasn't well designed, it would still be ranked pretty high due to the novelty alone. Luckily, this fight is fantastic. Sylvia is an elderly woman who is a retired Colosseum champion. She's made a bit easier due to having 2 companions to aid you, but her big-ass sword can take care of all 3 of you at once. Plus, you can take her on solo during the time attack.
I knew you'd be the one to pursue me, Adol.
Ah, Castaway Village. Next to Clocktown from Majora's Mask, this is cemented as the most organic hub village I've ever experienced in a video game, let alone an RPG. Every NPC has a story, a character, and a purpose. You have the blacksmith, the cook, the farm boy, the doctor. Uh-oh. Yeah, it turns out there was a serial killer aboard the Lombardia, and he is among the castaways who reside in Castaway Village. It's an enjoyable mystery to piece things together, and the battle itself is quite unique.
Come! The doctor will see you now!
Kiergaard's manner of attack is to use invisible wires spread around the battle arena like a minefield. Trip one of these puppies, and you'll be sliced to ribbons. You'll also run the risk of being inflicted by the bleeding status effect, which can leave you as a sitting duck. He's quick and can easily overwhelm you, so be aware of the traps he sets, or you'll become the Mad Doctor's next victim.
Come what may, we will charge ahead undaunted.
One thing you'll notice with Lacrimosa of Donna is the lack of a villain. The game has antagonists, sure, but not an overarching villain, and honestly, it doesn't need one. You could argue the Doctor is a villain, but his inclusion is very brief and the conflict is disposed of rather quickly. The Wardens of Evolution also provide nothing more than insight and information surrounding the game's final boss that is more of a force of nature than a villain. The Lacrimosa itself, known as Theos de Endogram, is a towering beast that you must take down in 3 segments. Right away, I got flashbacks from the final boss of VIII, and my muscles tensed, but to my surprise, it was over in a flash. This is both a good and a bad thing. It's a good thing because in VIII, the final boss was very deliberate in which party members took out which segment, so if there was a member you neglected, the game would punish you for making that decision. It's a bad thing though, because the boss isn't as impressionable. You can zip back to Castaway Village directly before you take it on, pump yourself up, then blaze through the 3 phases without a care in the world. I feel like there's a happy medium between this boss's format. Although a Voladrigil returns to cause havoc during numerous raids, there's a specific instance where I feel the dinosaur is at its peak in terror and memorability. Halfway up Mount Gendarme, the party encounters the Primordial for a rematch, and he's got a few new tricks up his sleeve, but so do you. I love this fight because it really highlights how much better the party has gotten, and a Voladrigil still puts up a good fight. It's an even match and you're just wondering who's going to cave first. It's fights like these that just show how peak Ys combat can be.
Let's avenge the captain! Together!
At the start of the game, the Lombardia sank under the clutches of a territorial sea monster. We got a glimpse of its power when we faced the tentacle of the unknown. Later on, we learned that those tentacles belong to a titanic kraken known as the Okeanos. The castaways make it clear that they will never be able to leave the island so long as the Okeanos is alive. So each chapter, you are inching closer to learn how to grow the village, learn about the Okeanos, and develop a strategy to take it down. And when the fight kicks off, it is glorious. The battle with the Okeanos is a hybrid of your standard boss fight with a beast raid. You have to stun the Okeanos by firing these spores so that you can reveal its weak point. This is a lot easier said than done because the Okeanos has a hefty amount of movesets. Tentacle slaps, ink spray, electric projectiles, currents, a gravitational pull,
Ugh, not very tasty.
and deadly tentacle whiskers can keep you distracted. It's a long fight, but boy is it rewarding to finally take down this terror of the deep.
Well, my calculations were correct.
At the top of the Baja Tower, the group encounters a dragon-shaped door, and surprise, surprise, it comes to life. Carveros is another unique boss that sets the battle in a more top-down view that feels like a throwback to previous Ys games. There are 2 sentinel dragon heads that aid the Great Stone Dragon. The sentinels are immortal, so you want to focus on the orb on the Great Stone Dragon, while avoiding a plethora of projectile and breath attacks. This battle can turn into a bullet hell and the boss can even knock you off the edge. But once that orb deactivates and the boss is stunned, boy do you get an adrenaline rush as you return the favor.
We're up pretty damn high.
If you've been following along, you'll notice that I'm a sucker for a good set piece, something that shakes up the dynamics of combat and stands out from the crowd. Giasburn is another one of those boss fights. This blazing rooster dragon sits atop Mount Gendarm, and I know I say this a lot, but damn is this thing huge! He towers over the party, flying over the strip with a barrage of attacks. It's not uncommon to just miss your flash window and take a hit or two. The primordial pterosaur is a real spectacle, being the first boss of the game to net 3 health bars.
Alright, let's start fixing it.
The boss of the Silent Tower is an unusual golem creature known as Mephorash. He may look silly as he lunges towards you, but don't let him catch you laughing or you will be catching those hands. This guy hits like a damn truck and can be borderline impossible to shake off. He also has a nasty counterattack that I keep mistaking as a regular block. Of course, he's optional because his ass is level 80. After taking out his first health bar, he spins around like a damn Beyblade. And don't even get me started on the 3rd phase.
I'm the best there is!
Once you clear the main game, you can reload your file and discover a question mark in Eternia. Head back to the Sanctuary Crypt in Adol's era, and you will begin the ruthless trial that is the former Sanctuary Crypt. Your party must now retread the entire Sanctuary Crypt, filled with monsters in the 70s and 80s, and a few boss reruns to boot. At the end of it all lies the final Sanctuary Guardian, Meleduma. This guy is by far the hardest boss of the game.
It's supposed to be a fucking RPG. What role am I playing? The fucking victim? Jesus fucking Christ!
Meleduma dual wields 2 enormous claymores, which can just knock off chunks of your health each time it swings, and it swings a lot. You will also have to avoid numerous electrical and light-based attacks as it dashes across the arena. But the absolute worst ability it can dish out, and the bane of my existence, is the black hole attack. If you get caught in this black hole, you will temporarily lose that character, and when they come back, they will be inflicted with a barrage of status effects, including burn. A lot of my failed attempts were an end result of me not entirely understanding what was happening with this attack, and stupidly trying to flash move to avoid it. If it can be done, I am incapable because I could not flash move that attack for the life of me. So instead, when Meleduma winds up, just get the hell out of there. As the boss's health gets lower, Meleduma will activate its wings and soar across the arena with rings of projectiles circling around it. It's a brutal battle, but boy does it feel great to put this guy to rest.
I am Maya.
Lacrimosa of Donna has multiple endings, which you can obtain by ranking up reputation points. Garner more than 195 reputation points, and the story will continue a bit further after the destruction of the Lacrimosa. In a hunt for Donna, you head to the Abyss of Origins, a haunting void that leads to the true final boss, the Origin of Life. The first form reminds me of the first creature from Evolution to step onto land, as depicted in classics like The Rite of Spring from Fantasia and the opening to The Land Before Time. You cannot attack this amphibious fetus directly, and must instead dispose of all of the enemies that it spawns to defend itself. As you take down wave after wave of enemies, you eventually release the life form from its protective cage, but just when you think you can finish it off, an even larger specimen bursts from the surface to encapsulate it. And now the real fight begins. Now the fetus pilots this eldritch monstrosity like a Megazord, and the true final battle begins as the music perfectly matches the sun rising in the distance. Beautiful. The Origin of Life's true form never backs down and will always face you head on. It has a variety of vicious attacks, but you can emerge victorious if you keep on the offensive and perfect your guards and dodges. And the cherry on top? This isn't a battle for the fate of the world, nor a battle for revenge. This is a battle just to tell Donna thank you, and I think it's beautiful.
Hello, lady.
You thought number 1 was the true final boss, but it was I, EO!
That's right, the best boss of the game is the final boss of the Sanctuary Crypt, the purest of maidens, Io. She has a saurian dragon form, and boy is it an exhilarating rush. At the start of the fight, Io seems quite similar to many of the other bosses of Sanctuary Crypt, but once she switches to her saurian Gratica form,
okay, now things are getting good.
Yup, Io has her own versions of both Gratica and Lumina, so you need to be good with all three forms to emerge victorious. As the battle goes on, she will frequently shuffle between the forms to keep you on your toes. It is the ultimate test with Donna, and afterwards you get the conclusive story to the history of not only Eternia, but Io herself. And that's my list. Let me know which bosses were your favorites, and if you like this video and would like to see a future ranking for say Ys 9 or 10, let me know. Stay tuned for more Ys videos.